my name's Ian, and I'm here today to talk to you about Reconstruction, an important yet oversimplified or overlooked era of American history. I'm going to give you a brief overview of what Reconstruction was and some key dates to remember. But if you already know this, then you can skip ahead. The timestamps should be linked under the video. The era after the Civil War is known as Reconstruction. And the goal of Reconstruction was to reintegrate the 11 states that had seceded in the Union and integrate newly freed African Americans into society. So, key dates you gotta remember are 1863, Emancipation Proclamation. December 1865 was the 13th Amendment, which outlawed slavery. March 1867, when was the first Reconstruction Act was passed. July 1868, the 14th Amendment. February 1870, the 15th Amendment. Compromise of 1877, which was the withdrawal of federal troops from the South in the end of Reconstruction. Also used methods of intimidation and violence. The most notable example of this is the Ku Klux Klan. After these rights were put in place legally, the black population of the South and the United States would have to fight an uphill battle to secure these rights. Now that you know the gist of Reconstruction, we can get into the main point of the video, and it's to answer this question. To what extent did the achievements of Reconstruction ultimately matter towards ending the political inequalities of slavery? Or in other terms, did the achievements of Reconstruction matter towards ending political inequality? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you my answer, and then we can talk about it. And by the way, my sources will be linked in the description if you want to take a look yourself. So this is my answer. The achievements of Reconstruction created a lasting impact on areas of the South most affected through education and tax rates, as well as giving the black population rights to fight for, birthing movements like the Civil Rights Movement of the 60s. However, a lot of their achievements of Reconstruction fell short of ending the political inequalities of slavery for the next 100 years due to the actions of white supremacists to disenfranchise black Americans and a failure to implement these processes properly. That's a lot, so let's talk about it. My first point is that the achievements of Reconstruction created a lasting impact on the South through tax rates and education. Despite the success of white supremacists at disenfranchising blacks in the South, some impacts cannot be reversed as easily, such as Reconstruction. Evidence from the 1870 census and then the 1910 census showed that areas most affected by federal troops under Reconstruction had the best education for black Americans. And this was years after the troops had been pulled, so that shows that there was a lasting impact. You're probably thinking, how do taxes play into this? Because that was part of my first point. Well, during the years that troops were supervising the South and making sure black Americans had the right to vote, a Republican-dominated Congress was elected, and Congress put in higher tax rates along with other things. These higher tax rates led to the creation of schools that educated the black population and other public works that helped them. The areas with higher tax rates under Reconstruction had the most opportunities for African Americans for the years following. We find that in counties where there had been greater federal presence during Reconstruction, black citizens were more likely to have a higher skilled/paid occupations. To conclude, the education gains in Reconstruction era were hard to reverse and led to a political and economic presence of black Americans. And that leads me to my second point, is that a lot of achievements of Reconstruction fell short of ending the political inequalities of slavery for the next 100 years due to the actions of white supremacists to disenfranchise black Americans and a failure to implement these processes properly. While Reconstruction did have lasting effects on the fight for equality, it was by no means over and was just getting started. Some historians call Reconstruction the country's second founding due to its long reach and effects. Well, it's like it led the way for civil rights protests and everything in the future by putting in place legislation that guaranteed the rights of black Americans. So after the withdrawal of troops in 1877 from the South, white supremacists immediately started to work to undermine the political power and rights of black people. This included groups like the KKK using fear, intimidation, and violence to discourage political participation, And also, southern states passed Jim Crow laws and put in regulations to keep blacks from voting, such as poll taxes, literacy tests, and the grandfather clauses, which poll taxes were you had to have an economic standing to be able to vote, right? And so that discouraged a lot of black people from voting because they tended to be more poor because they had just been enslaved, so they didn't have a lot of money. Then literacy tests, well, they didn't really have access to a ton of education. There was some things put in place, but not well. And so then the grandfather clauses, which this one was just outright denying them. It said that if your grandfather had been enslaved, you could not vote. Obviously, these clauses went against the 15th Amendment, but nothing was done about it because if the cops are racist, the courts are racist, and the people are racist, they're not going to convict anyone for doing this or try to fight against it. That is until later there started to birth civil rights movements who demanded these rights as they are given to in the Constitution. So, to conclude this video, Reconstruction was a complicated time in American history that stretched far past the traditional boundaries of 1863 to 1877. And while it did not achieve everything it sought to, it put in place legislation that would give people something to fight for rather than to secure. And it helped in ways not traditionally recognized. Thank you for listening. That's all today. I'll put my sources in the description, and I encourage you to take a look because they're very interesting.